Good morning, my name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and here is your detailed forecast update for January 10th, 2024. A lot to get through today, including heavy rainfall and thunderstorms expected across the southeast and the far north of Queensland. We've got some moderate falls also expected around Western Australia and the Northern Territory. A developing tropical cyclone offshore from Western Australia, and then we'll take a look at that powerful cyclone that was on the forecast yesterday. All of that plus more coming up in today's weather forecast. If you are brand new to the channel, please consider subscribing, but let's get stuck straight into things today. Over in the southeast of Queensland, we're going to be talking about severe thunderstorms that are expected to outbreak over the coming couple of days. Good couple of thunderstorms over the last few days as well, especially last night outside of Brisbane. 160mm fell in the adjacent suburbs to Brisbane along the coastline into some of the wetland areas. So some very significant falls were reported overnight, and those are now starting to ease off now as those thunderstorms ease out throughout this morning. We do have some more severe thunderstorms expected later on tonight and also into tomorrow night as well. However, they are going to be a little bit further inland. They will still fire up along the coastline. You can see a couple of showers still around the Brisbane area, at least on the forecast models, but let's zoom right in for the high resolution picture now with the convective forecast models. You can see plenty of good thunderstorms expected to develop further inland out towards Aroma and the Injuna area, extending inland to about Tambo, Augathella and Charleville by the looks of things. In fact, there is going to be thunderstorms pretty much right out to the central areas of Queensland as well, Longreach, Muttaburra and up to about Huandon as well. A couple of good thunderstorms possible out there. A good line of thunderstorms expected to develop around the Chinchilla and Taroom area, extending across towards Eddisvold and Billawheeler, and then along to the coastline as well, even adjacent towards Rockhampton. We'll be seeing a couple of good thunderstorms later on tonight. Into the immediate southeastern corners of Queensland, though, we will see a couple of storms here and there, but nothing crazy is expected. Thunderstorms will be at their most severe around the Billawheeler area later on this afternoon and evening, with the odd severe thunderstorm or two around the Charleville-Aroma area, but into the southeastern corner of Queensland, nothing really significant is expected, even along the Sunshine Coast and into the northeast of New South Wales. Yes, there will be a couple of strong cells here and there, but nothing in the way of crazy severe thunderstorms is expected. These storms will upscale pretty quickly as you get further north as well, and later on into tonight, we're expecting a very good line of thunderstorms to be developing around the Tambo, across to about the Rockhampton area, impacting areas such as Rolleston, Emerald, Dingo, Claremont and Moranbah, extending about as far north as Mackay. Now, thunderstorms up here will still be reasonably hit and miss. However, we are still expecting a good couple of thunderstorms here and there, and certainly the chance of some healthy severe ones up there later on this afternoon and evening. It doesn't look like it's going to be the southeast of Queensland tonight by the looks of things, but later on tonight into very early tomorrow morning, we could certainly be seeing some heavy showers developing around the southeastern corners of Queensland, especially into the Gold Coast by around 10 or 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. They should be engulfed in some pretty heavy showers down there, streaming into the coastline. You can really see them materialise on this rainfall forecast here, as a couple of severe thunderstorms develop along the New South Wales-Queensland border out towards Goondiwindi and Thallin. But these showers through here, they certainly could pack a punch in terms of heavy rainfall. The Axis C3 model, the convective forecast model from the Bureau of Meteorology, normally nails these shower forecasts, especially across the southeast of Queensland. Not so much in terms of location, but definitely in terms of intensity and severity, and it really does look like they're calling for some pretty gnarly showers to be moving ashore here. So early tomorrow morning across the southeastern corners of Queensland, you could be waking up to some pretty significant falls to start off your weekend. In terms of the significant numbers that I'm expecting, shouldn't be any higher than about 50mm, but there certainly could be a couple of good drops of rainfall around, and as with all these showers that often stream through here, there will also be places that pick up completely nothing as well. So rainfall, while it will be hit and miss, when it does hit, it will certainly hit quite hard. Later on tomorrow afternoon, there'll be a good couple of thunderstorms firing up around the St. George and Thallin area. They'll collapse in on themselves pretty quickly by the looks of things, and then late into tomorrow afternoon at around 3 or 4 p.m, we'll likely be seeing a couple of really good thunderstorms around the Taroom, Eddisvold, Billawheeler area, extending down towards Chinchilla and Kingaroy. It'll be interesting to see how the severe thunderstorms develop here. The Eastern Bear forecast model calling for them to be a little bit more coastal based, closer towards the Sunshine Coast and into the Wide Bay area around Agnes Water and Bundaberg, where that low pressure area is going to be. So it'll be interesting to see where these thunderstorms do actually fire up. There'll also be a good couple of thunderstorms around the southeastern corners of Queensland at around 2 or 3 p.m. as well. Plenty of nice thunderstorms, small pulse thunderstorms albeit, but some nice cells firing up adjacent to the Brisbane area and the Gold Coast area, and they'll be more intense the further inland, the further north you get, especially around the Kingaroy and the Toowoomba area before they drop off the further inland you get from those locations. As we push the forecast forward, you can see those showers and storms lingering through Saturday night into Sunday morning. In fact, again, some heavy showers expected to start off Sunday morning, in very similar to fashion how they're expected to start off tomorrow morning across the southeast of Queensland, and this will be turning in towards heavy rainfall at times across the northeastern corners of New South Wales. All this convective energy will build some meaty thunderstorms later on Sunday afternoon and into Sunday evening as well across the northeast of New South Wales. Those showers lingering through Sunday night into early Monday morning to start another working week across the northeast of New South Wales. and the showers also continuing through Monday, turning to storms at times later on in the afternoon across the northern areas of the Sunshine Coast, like I said, on late Monday afternoon. Good thunderstorms also expected into the central Queensland area on Monday afternoon, especially around the Rockhampton up to the Ogmore and Mackay area. There's going to be a good couple of thunderstorms up there as well Monday afternoon. And then after that, looks like Tuesday we get a return to the calmer, dry conditions across the southeast of Queensland. Still a few thunderstorms possible here and there. Wednesday and Thursday as well, a couple of thunderstorms possible here and there, with another outbreak expected to pipe up on Thursday before the showers and storms clear out of the southeast of Queensland for the foreseeable and reasonable future. You can see nothing really expected on the 10-day forecast, and then looking a little bit further out towards about Australia Day, there's also nothing on the 16-day long-range forecast as well across the southeast of Queensland. So we've just got to get through a couple more days of severe thunderstorms, or potentially severe thunderstorms, across the southeast of Queensland. Like I said, they certainly will pack a punch over the coming couple of days, especially these lines of showers in the morning for the immediate southeastern corners of Queensland. It's often something that gets overlooked on the forecast, especially from the Bureau of Meteorology, and also where a lot of people now get their weather news from social media, Instagram, and especially Facebook. A lot of people really overlook that stuff. I seem to be the only person talking about it, but those showers that come through in the morning across the southeast of Queensland, they can cause all loads of problems across some of the roads in there. Flash flooding, riverine flooding, certainly some really heavy downpours. I mean, they are used to it in the southeast of Queensland. The heavy downpours are no stranger to them. But when you're driving it from really slow down traffic, so if you're commuting to sporting commitments on Saturday and Sunday, I mean, I guess cricket's probably most likely to be rained out, but especially along the coastal areas of the southeast of Queensland, certainly something to keep in the back of your head. Rainfall accumulations over the next 3 days are healthy across the southeast of Queensland. You can see peak falls expected to be around that 100 to 150 millimetre mark across the southeastern corners. I reckon as you get further inland out towards the more mountainous areas around the scenic rim, accumulations will top out at about 100 millimetres. Closer to the coastline, it should be somewhere between that 50 to 80 millimetre mark. Brisbane probably around that 50 millimetre mark. Gold Coast slightly wetter. The northeastern corners rather of New South Wales between Coffs Harbour and Lismore, with heavy falls expected Sunday morning right through Sunday. To be honest, there will be some good falls down there. We'll talk about that in a future forecast update, but at least 130 millimetres possible there over the next 3 days as well. There's a little line of rainfall that's moving through central parts of Queensland. That's just from a couple of thunderstorms that will be moving through there over the coming couple of days, but you can really see the thunderstorm alley that's expected to open up tomorrow afternoon, pretty much in the triangulated area from Taroom, Billawheeler and Eddersfold, and then closer to the coastline out towards Agnes Water and Gladstone. Some significant falls are possible in this area as well, and again, I think that might be an overlooked factor on the forecast too. So if you do live in this area here, expect some heavy rainfall tomorrow afternoon and evening. That does it for the southeastern corners of Queensland. Same for the central coast, really. Nothing expected over the next 10 days at least. And even throughout New South Wales, good thunderstorms expected along the New South Wales coastline over the coming couple of days. And you can see as we push this forecast through, they're actually expecting a pretty decent week of thunderstorms across the New South Wales central coast. Thunderstorms expected to outbreak tonight, extending as far inland as about Griffith and Cobar as well. They will be few and far between the further inland you get, but certainly around the Tamworth area, certainly some good thunderstorms expected tonight and also tomorrow night. Thunderstorms will also be apparent Sunday night as well, and then Monday night it looks like they finally start to ease off a little bit. Still some good thunderstorms into the more central northeastern parts of the state as well, so we will keep a very close eye on things across what's expected with New South Wales too. In terms of severe thunderstorms, I'm not expecting them to be as severe as what they will be across the southeast of Queensland. Certainly the chances of a couple of severe thunderstorms here and there into the northeast of the state tonight and tomorrow night, but looking beyond that, it doesn't look overly likely at this time. A couple of days of dry weather before a cold front sweeps through, and this low-pressure system is expected to bring some heavy falls here and there throughout Thursday, Friday and Saturday next week to the southeastern corners of New South Wales and Victoria, and coupled with some heavy rainfall from thunderstorms as well, we could be seeing some accumulations down into the southeastern corners of New South Wales and Victoria, amounting up to about 100 millimetres or so. Again, news for another forecast update, but from Tuesday, or from about Wednesday onwards rather, we could certainly be seeing a deep low pressure bring a pretty juicy severe thunderstorm outbreak to parts of Victoria and New South Wales as well. Of course, with those northeasterly winds, or those northwesterly winds, those temperatures are going to be driven up dramatically across parts of Victoria and also in towards New South Wales as well. Here's a little Easter egg for you. On the forecast for both Tuesday and Wednesday, those temperatures are going to be really warm across New South Wales and Victoria. 43 degrees expected in Mildura on Tuesday. It's going to be substantially warmer than what the remainder of this week is going to be. You can see Monday expected to be a top of about 40 across the northeastern corners, the northwestern corners rather, of Victoria, and then 43 for Mildura on Tuesday. 29 degrees expected as the top for Melbourne, and then really warming up on Wednesday. You can see a top of, I believe it was 39 for Mildura, but Melbourne expecting a very warm top of 37. It could get a little bit warmer than that, and temperatures up to 45 degrees as you head further inland through interior parts of New South Wales and into the south central areas of Queensland as well. This is deep low pressure, system pressure of 975 millibars, certainly going to pack a punch. Some strong winds as well, which will elevate those fire danger ratings throughout next week through Victoria, South Australia and New South Wales, and coupled with the heat and dry thunderstorms that are possible on both Tuesday and Wednesday. Make sure you are prepared for a significant couple of fire days. Alright, that does it for New South Wales, the southeast of Queensland and Victoria. Let's head up into the far north of Queensland now, where we do have the chance of some heavy falls expected over the next 14 days. Let's just spoil the rainfall accumulations right now, get it over and done with. It's not what the ESMLF or the GFS is predicting, it's what the Access G3 is predicting. You can see 10-day rainfall accumulations, not even the worst of the rainfall over the next 14 days, still in excess of 250 millimetres along the Cassowary coast, and the GFS also calling for some really gnarly rainfall predictions as well, especially over the next kind of 10 to 16 day forecast period. Let's break that down right now. We're certainly going to be seeing an energy burst across the monsoon trough across northern areas of Australia, and whether this spins up tropical lows or tropical cyclones, still a lot of factors out there for the forecast models to iron out. Let's skip to the good part. You can see throughout Wednesday onwards, the 15th of January onwards, the rainfall really is going to be enhanced across the northern parts of the Northern Territory and parts of Queensland. We will likely see a weak low pressure system spin itself up. Now, we are only expecting one tropical low or low pressure system to develop across Western Australia, the Northern Territory and Queensland over the next 14 days, and where it develops is going to have dramatic ramifications on where the rainfall is expected to be. The ESMLF has been calling for it to develop over Western Australia, and that's why they're expecting that strong tropical cyclone later on in the forecast period. There's been a dramatic change with that, so stick around to the end of the video for it. The GFS has been more inclined to support it over the Northern Territory, and then moving into the Gulf of Carpentaria, which I think is going to be the solution that ends up panning out at this time. Just the hunch that I have here. So you can see the GFS spinning up that tropical low, the weak tropical low rather, over the northern areas of the Northern Territory, kind of in the Joseph Bonaparte Gulf north of Kununurra and Wyndham over in Western Australia, moving across, saturating the Northern Territory into Arnhem Land across Saturday, Sunday and Monday the 18th through to the 20th of January respectively, and then moving into the Gulf of Carpentaria, picking up a lot of moisture there, and you can see that low pressure system then steadily spinning up, and that will just drive moisture ashore over the Cape York Peninsula. So not only is the west coast of the Cape York Peninsula expecting enhanced rainfall later on to the forecast period, but we'll also likely see those winds sweep around into the Cassowary coast as well and present them with much needed rainfall, and a lot of it as well later on into the forecast period. Now, there are still a lot of details in this forecast that are quite murky and still a little bit difficult to make sense of, especially with how there is so much change with the forecast models, not only between what the ESMLF and the GFS are expecting right now, but just the day-on-day change with the forecast completely flipping itself on its head. So I would like to say this, and everything that I have said with the far north Queensland and the Northern Territory forecast, take it with a very, very heavy pinch of salt. In fact, probably take it with more salt than you would take it with trust with the forecast, because things can and they most certainly will change over the coming couple of days. I'll be able to give you a definite answer sometime between the 15th and the 18th of January with what's actually expected to happen here. There are a lot of uncertainties and inconsistencies with the forecast models that will be ironed out over the coming couple of days, but nonetheless, we are still expecting really significant rainfall to develop. So moving from the west and across towards the east, you can see peak rainfall accumulations up to about 500 millimetres across the west coast of the Northern Territory, extending up into Darwin, about 500 millimetres expected there, and some really good falls expected across Arnhem Land and the top end of the Northern Territory in general, with Catherine picking up 250 millimetres on this forecast, and then areas around the Queensland Northern Territory border along the coastline around Mornington Island up to about 400 millimetres possible there. Really good falls also expected as you zoom right in onto the Cassowary coast up here, falls up to about 200 millimetres expected, which for the GFS is really light on for the far northern areas of Queensland. When they call for 200 millimetres, you know all hell is about to break loose up there, especially if it was a lot closer on the forecast. But again, take this forecast with a very heavy pinch of salt. The Access G3 also now calling for some significant falls over the next 10 days. Keep in mind this forecast doesn't go out to when this rainfall is going to really begin to pipe up across the far northern areas of Queensland. So for them to be calling for 250 millimetres right out of the gate right now is painting a picture that some significant rainfall is on the cards. But I don't want to fearmonger anyone, and I would like to contrast this with the ESMLF forecast model, where they're only calling for a couple of millimetres, probably about 50 to 100 millimetres across much of the Cape York Peninsula, up to about 200 millimetres as you get up towards Urukun and Weipa and Thursday Island. Better rainfall is expected up there, but you can see offshore from Cairns and the Cassowary coast, in fact, less than 10 millimetres is expected over the next 10 days up there. Now, of course, the rainfall will pipe up a little bit later on to the forecast period, which does tell me that there is going to be some rainfall moving into the later parts of January January, sometime between the 20th and the 25th of January. Some rainfall is pretty much guaranteed for the far northern areas of Queensland, but at this time there is still so much uncertainty and so much inconsistency between the forecast models that it is very hard to tell exactly what they are expecting at this time. In short, I would just like to say that the Northern Territory and the top end of Western Australia are expecting some really good rainfall over the next 15 days. That goes pretty much without saying. All major forecast models are calling for that right now, and there's not really anything to suggest that that's not going to be happening. And also considering the rainfall will arrive there about 3 days before the rainfall will arrive up in Queensland, it is a lot closer to the forecast as well. So for the Northern Territory and Western Australia, you do have some significant falls on the way very shortly. However, for the far northern areas of Queensland, it's going to be a couple more days until we know exactly what rainfall's on the cards up there. I do still believe that, especially between sort of the 15th and the 25th of January, there will be some very significant falls across the Cape York Peninsula, whether it's on the western side, which does look to be a little bit more likely than it is on the eastern side, especially around the Cassowary Coast, is a little bit difficult to tell at this time, but I would say that over the next 15 days, at least 200 millimetres is on the cards now for areas such as Innisfail, Tully, the Tongue Oil Alert weather station that normally picks up some really significant falls as well. Cairns probably still under 100 millimetres on the forecast there, but we will keep a very close eye on things. GFS calling for a pretty significant rainfall event actually to unfold across much of the central coast of Queensland. You can see it here from a bit of a low pressure line expected to extend across the central coast of Queensland from about Saturday or Sunday, the 18th or 19th of January onwards. So we do have a lot of details still in the forecast to outline here. It'll be interesting to see what pans out over the coming couple of days. In short, tropical low expected to develop somewhere across the top end of Australia, whether it's Western Australia or the Northern Territory, still a little bit difficult to tell at this time. I think it's unlikely that it develops in the Gulf of Carpentaria, and exceedingly unlikely that anything develops in the Coral Sea as well, not at least in the next 10 days, which is good news for Queensland. It will spare them from a catastrophic rainfall event up there, but still, some good rainfall is certainly on the cards, not only for the Northern Territory and Western Australia, but also it is possible over in Queensland now. And I've said this every video, but just for new viewers, sea temperatures across the waters of Northern Australia are piping hot, especially adjacent to the Northern Territory and parts of Western Australia. Sea temperatures exceeding 31 or 32 degrees, which again, 2 or 3 degrees Celsius above average. Very warm stuff indeed. And any rainfall event that does start to get itself going will just have pretty much an infinite, a bottomless fuel source to develop thunderstorms and convection to dump exceedingly intense rainfall accumulations across the coastal areas and also into more inland areas as well. There is just so much fuel out there for clouds and thunderstorm activity to leach off of. It is a little bit better of a situation over in Queensland, but still sea temperatures at around that 29 to 30 degrees Celsius mark, and they are warming up as well. So again, if anything does get itself going in the Coral Sea, it's certainly not going to have much in the way of it, but it is an exceedingly bigger problem across the Northern Territory and Western Australia compared to the far northern areas of Queensland. We've also had a pretty big backflip on the forecast as well. We've expected an El Nino or a weak El Nino to develop sometime into the later parts of this year, but that looks like it's going to be unlikely now, with the sea temperatures now cooling across the ENSO 3.4 region, which is over here, and as such a weak La Nina is actually expected to develop over the coming couple of weeks. It will be a very brief one, and it will be a very strange late summer one, but that's expected to drive rainfall accumulations up across northern areas of Australia. And what that means for the channel is where I'm going to be releasing an updated rainfall and storm forecast across northern areas of Australia on February the 1st, so again, you don't want to be missing out on that, but there are some big changes, especially in rainfall accumulations that I was forecasting for later on into the wet season. No one saw this coming. It's interesting stuff, that's for sure, but we will keep a very close eye on things and see what that has to do with the Australian weather situation. Southwestern corner of Western Australia, nothing to talk about over there. We're going to keep it tropical though and talk about the waters adjacent to the West Australian coastline. Tropical low 08U fighting for life right now in the fate of some really high wind shear, but it has actually developed a centre of low pressure area, which is quite interesting. I didn't really expect this system to do that, and it is now firing up some pretty significant convection around its centre of low pressure. It's substantially far enough away from the West Australian coastline as to where it's not going to be presenting any impacts to land, but into the southwestern corners of WA you can see the tail end of the cloud being sheared off this system. That's expected to move over the central coast around Geraldton and Kalbarri throughout the course of today as well, so you could say that they're getting cyclone impacts with some cloud that's expected to move through. I am teasing, but again, it just goes to show how large these systems can expand over. This system here not expected to be any threat to land, of course, and it's not really expected to develop into a fully fledged tropical cyclone as well. We'll keep a close eye on things over the coming couple of hours as well. If it does develop into a tropical cyclone, there will be an update on the CyclonesOZ channel, but I don't really see it happening, and if it does, it's going to remain very weak throughout its life. So what happened to that monster system that the ECMWF was calling for yesterday? Well, I told you not to believe the forecast, and rightfully so. I mean, look at this. Radio silence as we push the forecast out. Not even a couple of thunderstorms expected across the northwest of Western Australia, right out until about Australia Day. So there really isn't anything to be panicked about across the northwest of Western Australia. It was a valid forecast at the time, especially considering other forecast models have been calling for it as well, and there was actually good congruency between the ECMWF and the GFS forecast model, but it has been canned off the forecast now, which is good news for the northwest of Western Australia, because that was a monster system, an absolute brute of a storm that would cause some very significant damage, that's for sure. Now, is it a complete goner? Is it not going to be coming back? Is it going to happen? Is this tropical cyclone going to happen? I hear you asking through the computer screen. Well, it's exceedingly unlikely now. Probably about a 10% chance we do see a powerful tropical cyclone offshore from the coast of Western Australia in the next 14 days. The low pressure area, which you can see here developing later on into the forecast period, there's also going to be one developing around sort of the 16th or the 17th of January as well. This will be one to watch. If it moves further offshore, if it gets itself jammed up over the northwestern areas of Western Australia, then we will certainly have to revisit the forecast again, and I wouldn't be surprised if there are a couple more forecast runs that were suggesting a powerful cyclone developing offshore from Western Australia. But right now the forecast models seem to be lining up with this system forming in the Joseph Bonaparte Gulf and then moving across the Northern Territory and into the Gulf of Carpentaria, which I believe at this time to be the more likely scenario that this system takes. I'm giving it probably about a 70-30% chance. 70% it takes this track here and 30% it ends up offshore from Western Australia. There's still good model support with some of the ensembles for a strong tropical cyclone offshore from Western Australia, but it isn't as great as what it was yesterday. So it's definitely too early to breathe that heavy sigh of relief for locations between Exmouth and Broome for the impacts of a strong tropical cyclone. It is still possible at this time, but I don't want to be worrying anyone, and it's still about 10 days out into the future. So again, exceedingly unlikely, not impossible, and we will keep a very close eye on things on the forecast up there. Certainly was a brute of a system, and it had me quite worried that we were going to be seeing an absolute monster moving ashore into the WA areas sometime around the Australia Day time. But yeah, it doesn't look like that's going to be happening right now, but we do still have those two separate tropical lows here, and one later on to the forecast period around Australia Day. This one, just given the trajectory of it, it looks like it is going to actually head over into WA waters here, so we will need to keep a very close eye on the forecast into the later parts of January, but there's nothing to be worried about across the northern end of Western Australia, unless you live in the Kimberley region, where there probably will be a little bit of rainfall to worry about, with up to 500mm expected over the next 10 days. Anyways, that is all that I have time for today. I do apologise for the pretty shaky narration that's been interrupted. The narration's gone for about 40 minutes right now. It's been interrupted. I've woken up not feeling really great. So again, thank you so much for putting up with the shaky narration this morning. I would appreciate a like on the video as well, and subscribe if you haven't already as well. Thank you so much for watching the video to this point, and a special shout out to the channel sponsors. Their names are on screen right now. Again, I could not run this show without them, and their support is much appreciated as well. But that is all from me today, and I will catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.